So I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about using Zoom to work with your students during this extended closure. There are going to be times when threaded discussions on Schoology or trading emails is just not going to be sufficient, and you're going to want to talk to your students. So even if you're planning on doing everything else virtually, you're probably going to want to have office hours at some point where students can basically ask you questions one-on-one or in small groups on one. So we're looking at Zoom for this purpose. Now, when you sign up for Zoom, you should use your Divine Child email address. Now, if you click on sign in or create an account, you're going to then click in sign in with Google, and then you're going to type in your Divine Child email address and password, and it'll create you an account. And then that account will have, because we're associated with the school, will have some limits that normally go with the basic account lifted because of the extended school closures. Now, in the settings in Zoom, you must go in and set it so that the cameras of the participants are turned off. I'll show you how to do that. You will also want to require your students to use Zoom only in a public space in their house. So they shouldn't be doing it in their bedroom. They should be out in the living room or a family room or at the dining table, wherever. It's a public space in the house. And then you must, when you're doing this with your students, if you're going to be sharing the screen of your iPad, you must put your iPad in Do Not Disturb mode, okay? You can do that by swiping down and making sure that little moon is highlighted. Then you know you're in Do Not Disturb mode, because you really don't want your notifications popping up where your students can be reading them. So, other general recommendations that I will make in your use of Zoom is when you set up the Zoom, what you can do is you can set it up so that there's a waiting room, all right? So when the students, they don't instantly end up in the shared chat, but they end up in a waiting room, and then you as the host have to allow them to enter. So now I'm going to require my students use their real names when they're logging into Zoom. If I see somebody who doesn't have one of the names of my students in the waiting room, I am not going to allow them into my Zoom room. So I don't want to allow Mr. Sparkle Pants in, but I will allow one of my students in. You will also probably want to go in and make sure that you haven't checked the box that says require a meeting password. That's just one more thing that the students will have to type in. So with the waiting room, you don't really need it because you're allowing them in. Otherwise, what would happen is students would try to join, and then it would ask them for a meeting password. And that's just, if we can not require that, that's one less hurdle for our students in participation. You also, as the host, have the ability, so if a student turns their camera on, you can turn it off. You just have to go in and tap on them, and you'll have some other options. And one of those is turn the camera off. You can also remove them from the session completely if you want. And remember, this is your classroom, right? So you have rules and expectations in your classroom. Those should also apply in this virtual space. Just because you're not in our building does not mean that they don't behave as students should behave, and or the expectations you set shouldn't be adhered to. So if they're not, just kick them out of the room and then talk to their parents about why they might have been kicked out. Now, if you're on your computer, when you log in, you'll end up on a screen where you can see a big blue button that says schedule a meeting. You're going to click that button, and then you're going to be taken to a spot where there's lots of meeting settings. At the top of the page, there will be things like meeting name, meeting description, the time, things like that. But as you scroll down, this is what I want you to look at. So you've got a spot where it says require meeting password. Make sure that's not checked. And then video. The host and participant video should be turned off on entry, okay? You may want to turn your video on so that your students can see a friendly face during this extended closure, but your students should not have their video cameras on. Audio, both, basically what this allows for is they can do audio through the internet, through their computer or their iPad, or the telephone. There's actually a phone number they can call, and they can put the meeting ID in, and then they can join the audio conference via telephone if they want to. I usually just leave it on both. It doesn't hurt anything. Then I check these two boxes, enable join before host and enable waiting room. And then we're good to go, and you click save. And that's how you would set up your meeting on your computer. I'm going to do a whole video walkthrough on doing the same thing on your iPad because I suspect many of you will be using your iPads to do this.